Well, yes, indeed, Mr. Manu Lukeje joins us next, the Director of Financial Markets in the CBN, to shed some light on this policy. We could call it policy of the CBN, can't we? Thank you for coming on this morning anyway.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Well, we do know you've spoken about, the CBN in terms of why they will no longer allow, while the BDCs have been asked to source their foreign exchange from alternative sources. But there are those who also think that the CBN actually was bowing to pressure, allowing customers to deposit dollars in the banks. Is that the case?
No, not really. Let me put one thing straight. The initial decision not to allow banks collect foreign deposit did not actually start with the central banks. The banks complained their vaults were overflowing with dollar cash. The banks were actually the ones that started saying we can no more take dollar cash. And all the CBN did was to support them, say, okay, if your vaults are full and you don't take dollar cash, then stop it. But as that went on, we discovered that a lot of the banks were actually selling the BTA, some ran down their FS reserve, and some actually applied that they should be given the permission to send some of those cash overseas so that they can use the dollar deposited to fund some LCs for importation. And apparently that was what led to the depletion of the cash FX the banks actually had. So it was not an issue that the central bank said, because I have seen that going all up and down, that central banks...
Yeah, but that's the impression that the banks gave us, that the CBN says no more.
The banks started that because they had their vaults full, and they initially wanted to move those money, which we said no, but at a point, we said, okay, since you want to use that to fund import, you can move some of those things.
And then CBN then said, don't deposit your, any more dollars.
Yes, when they said the vaults were full, we said, don't. Then if you have said you cannot accept dollars, there was no point.
What's the risk in having an overflow of forex?
Of course, having a forex, you don't pay interest on, and of course they were carrying risk, insurance risk, on debts on their books, because you have to insure those dollars they were carrying in their vaults. So that was a basic starting point for that, which need to be cleared. So it was not as if central bank just came up and said no more dollar deposit. The banks actually started it, and you will know that your banks will have told you, if you have gone at that time, they tell you we can't receive even before the central bank.
So was it that we didn't have the capacity to insure those funds?
No, it's not really insurance. I will tell you one thing. You see, the dollar issue is what you actually need. We all knew, I don't want to go back to what happened where people got dollar and how they put it in the banks. But there's a limit the banks can have. And what do they use it for? They don't lend in dollar cash. So carrying dollar cash in their vault is actually a risk, and it's money they don't really need. Because you and I, it is what you put there. But when it's in excess, then you find out that they were just carrying those money, they don't need them.
With an import bill of over 900 million naira, you say that the banks didn't need it.
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Import bill, you don't import with dollar cash. Mind you, there are two different things. The dollar you deposit as cash in your bank cannot be used for importation. You can only go to your bank to withdraw that cash if you need to travel with those dollar cash. That dollar becomes useful if it is wired. That is the only way you can pay those you are importing from. We cannot pay them dollar cash in Nigeria. It's only those who want to travel and hold cash that can use that dollar that is deposited in cash. So what you need is foreign reserve in their escrow account. Okay. That is what they can use to fund importation.
So the CBN wanted to correct that, and that's why they came up with that policy. Do not deposit more dollars in your account. But now that you have reversed yourself, saying, yes, well, yes, you can go ahead and, well, what was that meant to achieve?
What that we achieved basically is that because we have had complaints of people who say they earn dollars in Nigeria, you can deposit that amount. Because let me tell you one funny thing.
You mean the CBN did not know that there were those who were earning dollars before they came up with that policy?
Well, you see, some of those things, when you do it at a particular point in time, it's not that we do not know. We know that those people were earning dollars, but we also know that the currency of the country is naira. And we did not want a situation then where the economy becomes dollarized, which we stated, because virtually everything was being priced in dollars. Then, and I think to a very large extent, we have been able to achieve that going forward. And now that this has been done, is to enable people to actually bring those who have dollars, you get to put in your money and you'll be able to take it. And mind you...
So you can only put in the money, you can transfer it?
You can, that I will clarify. Now, if you want to transfer, because what we have done, what is clear about this now is the bank decide, because they will not come back to central bank to ask for dollar to pay for anybody's dollar. So if somebody gives you dollar and wants you to transfer it, inadvertently, what he has done is that you have moved that money on his behalf, and you must make sure you have money to meet that demand when the person needs it, and you don't come to central banks to fund it. Because I will tell you one thing. I had the gentleman that left talking about dollar has been created. He's happy he can go about and swap his card overseas and shop. It's not the same thing. Because I'll tell you one thing, that you have 1 million in your account today does not translate to $1. Because what you are doing for, as soon as you swipe your card in London or US, you have committed your bank to send to actually pay for that what you have spent. And what you have in Nigeria is actually Naira. So your bank has to source for dollar. Except for those who have dollar here, who have loaded their dollar into their dollar card. They are the people who are actually spending their dollars.
Let me just quickly clarify. So that means CBN saying you could deposit dollars in your account automatically means that you can then, of course, if you deposit, you should be able to use your card. That's what it means, even though there was no express commentary on that.
Yes, you can you can use your money, but like I told you, the bank takes responsibility for that. The banks that is issuing you the card must make sure that it has enough money to be able to back up.
Who was taking responsibility before?
What is happening is that was done, and eventually everybody says central bank, because immediately you commit yourself, it becomes a national issue.
You know, the issue here is that most of the banks before now, that's why it's amazing that you're telling us something quite differently, that it was the banks, the banks who said, look, we can't take more. Was the CBN accepting the dollars from the banks? We're talking about warehousing of the foreign currency. Did you stop collecting from the banks?
No, we're not warehousing. We're not warehousing from the banks. As a matter of fact.
So you stopped warehousing from
No, we were not. They were warehousing it, but the issue was that they had more than they could cope with at a point in time.
There was no way other than that
directive.
There was no way other than that directive that the CBN would have been able to help the banks?
No, the other thing they would have done is what eventually they did was to evacuate, using travelers, to evacuate parts of the dollar they had overseas. So that was the only option which eventually they had that permission to do.
Because it's amazing that we're talking about this now. What the vibe loads of Nigerians, I mean, you have friends, you have relatives. The vibe was that CBN and even the government, they were doing or bringing up policies that were inimical to the people, because a lot of people suffered. And if you say this was as a result of my own bank's complaint, why is it that we just get to hear about this now that this directive has been lifted? Why didn't anyone explain to me or you, because even a lot of people who wanted to travel for medicals to get their visas paid for their visa fees, some losses we can't even account for as we speak.
Sincerely speaking, I'm surprised that you didn't even hear that, because I know that most customers, even before that policy came on, had text messages from the banks saying that they are no longer accepting dollar cash deposit, even before the CBN supported what the banks were doing.
But then, for those who are concerned, saying if the banks complained that they couldn't handle it, doesn't that speak to the limited capacity of the banks? How much is the GDP? What's the capacity of our economy that the banks say they can't accept more dollars?
No, the issue is, like I said, what do you do with dollar cash? Except you want to travel, you take BTA, PTA, you cannot import with dollar cash. That is the truth about it. No bank can tell you that I'm going to pay for import bill using the dollar cash she has in its domiciliary account.
Don't banks have a way to wire the money?
That is eventually what they did which they got permission to wire that money, and that was eventually what resulted in the scarcity because we stopped deposit. And that is what this is likely to correct.
This should have been commonsensical. I mean, that should be, if you had excess, there was a huge import bill. It would seem that what was logical was for you to be able to transfer the money. But what we heard was that even the dollar you had in your account, you couldn't transfer.
Yeah.
You couldn't wire, except money that was wired directly to you or that was in a transfer system of some sort. What informed that sort of policy?
I'll tell you one thing. The issue was part of avoiding dollars in a situation where people go to use naira to buy dollar to deposit in a domiciliary account. That is not the role domiciliary account is supposed to play. Domiciliary account is supposed to warehouse your foreign inflow in a situation where you have free access to your money. But in a situation where, as citizens, you now use your domestic currency to buy a foreign currency and dump it in an account in your country, then that is not normal.